and be curious about where it is coming from. And often we might have a trauma, and actually, when we really think about it, that's not the initial trauma. It was a re-trauma. It was not about whether somebody deserves to be forgiven. It's that you deserve peace. You deserve to not have to be angry about that anymore. And sometimes we're stuck because the person who we used to be in that place that we keep revisiting and thinking about, we don't want to let them down because they were angry and it wasn't fair.
Go back and nurture your inner child, reparent your inner child. Your inner child was unconditionally loved, but your mother's behaviour was based on her own wounding, and she just didn't have those abilities, those capabilities, that understanding of how to be a mother. But that was never the child's fault. That was never your fault. It reminds me of that scene in Good Hunting. It's not your fucking fault. How is it the fault of an innocent child who can't even talk? And I had to keep telling my inner child this. And at marriage, you say the same to your inner child. It was never you. It was never.
Journaling as well. We talk about that a lot. So some ways, sometimes, particularly if you're quite somebody who likes to think a lot in your head, if you're a big thinker, to actually get it out on paper in some ways takes it out. It stops it churning. And it also gives you chance, either when you're not in that moment anymore or in that moment, to see what you're thinking or see what you're feeling and try and be curious about where it is coming from. And often we might have a trauma, and actually, when we really think about it, that's not the initial trauma. It was a re-trauma. It was a similar experience or something that came into our life because of something that happened much earlier on. And so sometimes you find, oh, hold on, I've uncovered something that I thought I, pretty much forgotten, and I've done that when I was working with you with the inner child work. And that's just when I got to the bottom of that thing and I understood it, and I understood myself as a child, and I understood my family dynamic. And it wasn't my parents, it was to do with my grandma. I just want to say that. And the choices that people made and the things that they did with the best intention, but that's not how it felt in that moment as a child that didn't understand, So that was so powerful. But I didn't realize that had affected me for so long, I saw my other trauma, my other big trauma, and I processed some of that, but there was still something else, and that's what it was. So
it's amazing when you do dig deep. Like, you realize that a lot of your patterns, a lot of your toxic relationships, or a lot of any trauma that you've been through in adult life can stem back to what you went through as a child. It's so interconnected. And as you said, journaling is helpful, but what I actually do on a daily basis is talk out loud to myself. I have those open conversations. Like, I have a back and forth. I would say, I'd have two-sided conversations with myself, and it really works. You know what I mean? It really does. It helps. Like, so it is like journaling, but I just have open side up.
Yeah. What else have I got on my list? So you mentioned physical activity. So
dancing is good too, actually.
Yeah, like a bit crazy.
Like no one watching. I love it.
Yeah, just moving your body so it actually releases happy feel good hormones just to exercise. So even when we're processing difficult things and maybe we're a bit stuck with it, going out and going for a walk in nature, or getting on the treadmill, or going to the gym, or doing some yoga, all of that.
Kundalini yoga is one of my favorite things to do, actually. Really good.
Yeah. And setting boundaries as well is an important one, particularly if it's linked to a person who perhaps might still be in your circle in some way, is to have set boundaries to protect yourself, not because you're avoiding the trauma, but because perhaps some situations are not good for you, or that it drains you.
Well, one thing I noticed is, like, you can't heal if you're surrounded by stuff that reminds you of your trauma. For example, like when I went through a certain trauma, I had to stop reading the newspaper or watching the news, because that trauma would be on the news consistently. And how can I heal from something if it's thrown in my face every day?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, leaving the village that the trauma happened in, something like that. That's what I had to do as well, because I wasn't going to be able to heal if I was constantly reminded of being in that same house or whatever. Do you know, so it is very important to remove yourself from a situation that is connected to what you're healing from.
Yeah, and setting boundaries with yourself as well. So, you know, it's not checking up on exes and seeing what they're up to and stuff,
Yeah,
you
that
know.
that brings me to the point of forgiveness. Now, and I, you know, this is a trigger for a lot of people. You know, forgiving somebody for what they did to you, or you know, I'm going to forgiving yourself after that. But oftentimes, the past or a past trauma can still have a hold or control of you if you don't forgive it. Now, forgiveness is not about condoning the behavior. Forgiving, you're not going to go up to your fucking ex and say, "Oh, it's okay, you know, I forgive you." Don't do that. You should be blocked anyway. Don't do that. You're forgiving them in a sense so that you can release its hold on you. You're releasing it for healing purposes. So, like what I did a video the other day, so instead of saying forgive, release.
Mm-hmm.
Release that person. So you're forgiving not what they did, but you're forgiving so that it just, the hold is gone. You know what I mean? And, you know, I know that can be triggering for some people because a lot of monsters do not deserve forgiveness. But unless you forgive them, if they have a hold, I'll give you one example. Like, my ex almost died a few years after we broke up. And I hated him. I wished all the bad karma on him. But when he died, I was like, oh, shit. But yet my body reacted. That's the thing with your body reacting to suppressed emotion. And my body reacted like I did care. And I was like, that's not right. Because I was like, I don't have feelings for him. I fucking hate him. And I had to ask myself, I had to go within, I had to figure out why I was reacting to this. And it turned out I felt guilty. I felt guilty because I thought I almost killed him by my thoughts. And that's when I knew I had to forgive him because that was what he still had a hold on me because I felt guilty for his fucking lack of, you know, well-being because he didn't look after himself and nearly died. That wasn't anything to do with me, but because of lack of forgiveness, it still had a hold on me. So I had to let that go and let him go completely by releasing that, by forgiving that. And another thing I go on to with forgiveness is oftentimes we can hold an awful lot of inner resentment and anger towards ourselves because we blame ourselves for certain things that happened. So we need to learn how to forgive ourselves. Even though we don't need forgiveness because we didn't do anything wrong, we have to, that's how the past can still hold us as well. Because we're sitting here blaming ourselves for what we see as allowing it to happen. You didn't allow it to happen. You made choices based on your wounding, on your trauma. You went through things based on the knowledge you had then. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't cause for yourself to be abused. You were just in a vulnerable state due to your wounding. So you have to let go of the fact, let go of that anger towards yourself. Because the past and your ex or whatever it is will still control you because you're still holding inner resentment towards yourself as well. So that's another way to release the past is to learn forgiveness for yourself and others.
Yeah, so that was what I was going to say. Once you've processed it, forgiveness is the way to release it. So once you've processed it, like we say, don't get stuck there. If it crops back up, obviously you need to look at it. But don't spend forever processing it.
Yeah,
it doesn't take that long.
When you're angry with somebody, when you're hating on somebody, when you're bitter towards somebody, who you're hurting? They don't know.
It's not on their radar, probably.
No, you're hurting yourself. You're bringing negativity and bad energy into your aura and into your body by holding resentment towards them. And what does that mean? That means they still have control of you.
Yeah.
If you're still angry with them, they're still fucking winning.
Yeah. So I like to think of forgiveness as a gift of peace to yourself. Yeah.
That's a lovely way to
it's not about whether somebody deserves to be forgiven. It's that you deserve peace. You deserve to not have to be angry about that anymore. And sometimes we're stuck because the person who we used to be in that place that we keep revisiting and thinking about, We don't want to let them down because they were angry and it wasn't fair, you know, but we're not that person anymore. You know, we change every day, we grow every day. And forgiveness is about, you have to give yourself permission to let it go, you know, give yourself permission to heal, because holding on to it and thinking about it, the only person, you know, you sitting there being angry about something that somebody did to you last week, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, when you were tiny, you know, it's that person might not even be alive anymore, you know,
Yeah.
or that certainly if they are, I very much doubt they think about it as you do, as much as you do. So if at all, really, you know, and even sometimes people don't know that they've traumatized you. Sometimes people can just be in their own, dealing with
Yeah.
their own stuff.
Unevolved human beings that are not
Yeah,
self-aware have done things that they're not aware have been wrong because of their own upbringing and their own beliefs. You know what I mean? So, you know, you're holding on to something that doesn't even cross their mind, and you're literally only affecting yourself.
yeah. And I say this a lot, the power is in the now.
Mm.
The power isn't in the past. The power is in the now. What we do now affects what happens tomorrow. The
Yeah.
past only affects tomorrow if you sit in it. Yeah. And so by processing it however you need to process it, and that might be talking to someone, but um, talk to a professional or a loved one or a coach, but be very careful about who you choose to speak to, because some people can think they're helping and just keep you stuck there
Yeah.
in victim mode. Oh,
Yeah.
poor you. Oh, you know, and actually
Yeah.
it's not helping you process it and move on. It, you know, sometimes
No.
it's nice to get a bit of sympathy, isn't it? You know, but it doesn't help you move forward in the moment.
No. No.
So
Because if you're speaking to somebody that is in that low mentality as well, they're going to sit there and bitch with you, and you're going to be angry towards that person, and they're going to be angry towards
yeah,
that person. So you know you're not actually growing. You're literally sitting in this bubble of angriness. And like another thing as well, our mind creates what we think. So if we're bitter, jealous, or angry towards another person, we actually bring that energy back into our lives. So if we're wishing negative on somebody, we're actually inviting that negativity into our own lives. So if we're bitter, we're actually bitter towards ourselves. It's a reflection. So we have to be careful of that.
so someone said my anger is not just what she did, but also how it has affected my life. Yeah, but then even more reason to forgive, because every
Mm-hmm.
day that you choose not to, and I'm not saying it's easy to forgive, so, and you know, it's some things, there's so much bitterness and resentment there that it does take a lot of processing, and it isn't easy, and
It's
it's, you
not.
know, when
Like, you know,
somebody,
I've been through very traumatic experiences between relationships and other things, and I've been to the deepest, darkest depths of hell, and I literally think, you know, that those people ruined my life. They did ruin my life. But because of being able to get out of that hole, because of who I am now, because of my experience, because of being able to help others with the same trauma, it's weird to say this. I'm grateful for my experiences. There was a time in my life where I wished nothing more than to press the rewind button and reset. But I've gotten so far in my healing, and I never thought I'd even get to 70% of healing my trauma. But I've actually gone over 100%, which is really weird because this was something that was on my mind every single day. And, you know, now I don't want to rewind. Like, don't get me wrong, I wish I hadn't experienced it. I wish you know, it was something different. But would I be the person I am now if I hadn't have gone through it? Would I be able to help other people if I hadn't have gone through it? So, you know, it's weird to say this. And I'm obviously not grateful that I've suffered, but I'm grateful for the person I am now. So when we can flip that or reframe it in a sense, we can actually see that some things in life are actually really, it's weird to say it, it's beneficial. I mean, it's not, it really fucks me up to say this. It's just weird because it's not something that obviously you'd wish on anyone, or I wish I didn't even go through it. but I'm stronger. I'm a warrior. I'm a survivor. You know, I'm the best version of myself because I've healed that stuff. But if I'd never healed it, gone through it to heal it, would I have the strength I have now? Would I have the compassion I have now? You know, I think our lives shape us, the bad and the good.
Pressure shapes, you know, a diamond would
Was
just
once a
be,
piece of coal, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah,
you know.
you know.
What Marge is actually my mum. um, tell us a little bit more. What's the block, do you think? What's the block, do you think, of forgiveness?
What I find with sometimes with the anger, especially my own anger, I have been so angry with myself for not seeing behind the deceit, for falling for somebody's lies, for not seeing behind the mask. But I've come to realize that every toxic relationship I've had its good qualities. You know, some of them helped me grow in ways. Some of them helped me into a better person. Some of them brought me out of my shell before they got toxic. So when you actually look back, there were certain aspects of that dynamic that were beneficial. And also, you weren't supposed to see behind the mask until you were ready, until all the lessons were learned. So we're angry with ourselves for no reason, because it was supposed to happen that way. It was our divine plan for it to happen that way.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Tell us what have a think and tell us what you think your block might be to forgiveness. What I think is a good idea, if you're struggling, and I know a little bit about the situation that she's talking about, and it was for here triggers: a Mother's Day nightmare, listening to adverts, mums on school gates. So it's from being very young. What is it about the situation that makes you angry? She'll type in a minute. Something that can help. So in this situation, it's from being young. Is if you've done a bit of processing, a bit of journaling when these triggers come up. So it's Mother's Day. This is triggering me. Why is it triggering me? And lay out what is it about what happened in the past that bothers you or that hurt you. You can do some visualization of going back as yourself now and comforting the child that you were in that situation and explaining to them what you know now with all the tools and skills that you have as an adult, and kind of speaking to that inner child that you have.
That's
And
the
then,
importance of inner child healing, yeah.
and then let the inner child give you permission to forgive and let it go,
Yeah.
because you're not that little girl anymore, and that little girl probably wouldn't want you to still be angry about it. She'd want you to go and enjoy your life. And Mother's Day, you're a mother, so you should be enjoying Mother's Day. Yeah. And so it just taints it for you because that forgiveness isn't there. um And
And
remember that forgiveness is about yourself, not about the other person. It's about choosing to let it go and giving yourself permission not to be angry about it anymore.
I
Because
see here,
go on.
yeah, I can connect to that very much. I spent most of my life. My mother left when I was 2 years old, so I
Stop a
spent
minute.
most of my life.
Is it connected to what she's just written?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she said because a mother should have unconditional love, seeing love that I
yeah.
didn't get. So I'll describe my little version here because then I can hopefully be able to help you with yours. I spent 30 plus years of my life believing my mother didn't love me, and I unconsciously felt so unworthy of that love because obviously I was led to believe that a mother's unconditional love is the thing that shapes everyone. And I thought, if I can't even get my mother's love, I'm a piece of shit. Like, I'm unworthy of all love. I'm just unworthy. But I realized that my mother did love me, but because of her own trauma and her own problems, she hadn't the capability of being the mother that I needed. So she left. So your mother, I believe, would have loved you, but she wasn't capable of even loving herself because of her own trauma. So therefore, she didn't know how to love you. And this is why inner child healing is so important. I have to go back and say that to my inner child and say, your mother did love you. She just didn't know how to be a mother because she didn't have that herself. And that's what I want to say to you is go back and nurture your inner child, reparent your inner child. Your inner child was unconditionally loved, but your mother's behaviour was based on her own wounding. And she just didn't have those abilities, those capabilities, that understanding of how to be a mother. But that was never the child's fault. That was never your fault. It reminds me of that scene in Good Hunting. It's not your fucking fault. How is it the fault of an innocent child who can't even talk? And I had to keep telling my inner child this. And at marriage, you say the same to your inner child. It was never you. It was never your, how can a child's personality, or, a child can't do anything wrong, bar right at the wall. That's nothing like, you know what I mean? How can a child be the cause of a parent's inability to love? Your parents' inability to love was based on their own upbringing, their own trauma. And it was never, ever your fault. This is why going into your inner child, reparenting them, loving them, giving them validation that they need, will bring you into that self-worth and will help you to release that anger. But it was never, ever, ever your fault. And your mother had her own problems. Now, that's obviously not condoning her behavior, because obviously we've been through bad things, but we changed the cycle, which is so important. But your mother hadn't the tools to change the cycle. Whereas we're lucky enough in this day and age to have, more resources to mental health, more resources to inner healing. The internet can give us that ability to find resources there as well. Whereas back in the day, our parents did not have what we have now. So it's our turn to change the cycle. But remember that it was her mentality, a reflection of her and her upbringing, and never, ever was it your fault.